Hey, what's up out there? Dave Duford here at davidduford.com, where help insurance agents like you become top producing insurance professionals. So today, you're joining me on a live stream call that I'm doing with my agency. And basically what we're going to do today is a little different than the carrier training that we typically do. It's going to be intertwined in that. We're going to do some basically, I don't know how to describe this. I'm going to take some sample underwriting cases and then ask my agents to play along and help me determine which carriers are going to be best suited for these clients. So it is May 6, 2020. Understand that all underwriting is subject to change and is not guaranteed to be the same in the future if you're watching this at a future date. So this is something I do rarely, but probably going to start doing more of, simply because it connects what we read and learn about the carriers and connects it to the real world. And certainly having a grasp of the product knowledge, specifically the underwriting, is really important. So for my audience watching now, if you've got any questions, feel free to use the chat to communicate, or you can unmute yourself. That certainly works too as well. So a couple of things here I'm going to share with you. Let me shut down my Shaka Khan video. Let's go ahead and share this in the chat. So the first thing is the best carriers page. So make sure that you save this. This has access to all the carriers. This is going to be kind of the resource guide that we're going to use and kind of discuss the carriers that are out there. Also, if you are, we'll probably be looking at the final expense cheat sheet for Telesales as well. So this page here covers that. And then also, last but not least, this is the cheat sheet. It houses all the carriers for the face-to-face training. So there is that. And if you're watching this at a later date and you don't see this on the screen, probably don't, just shoot me an email, davidduford.com/contact. I don't mind sharing all of this stuff with you. Okay. So let me pull up the cheat sheets here on the screen so I can get a little bit more prepared myself. And then let's go into a couple of things here before we get started, just to make sure we're on the same page, what you should be able to see. So what I want you all to do here as you play along, I'm going to give you some an underwriting case sample. Please don't unmute yourself and blurt out the answer right away. I would prefer, if you're watching this live, to chat it or communicate via chat, or just at least wait 10 or 15 seconds before you unmute yourself to answer it. The reason why I want everybody to kind of give themselves an opportunity to review what I'm about to show you on the screen. In fact, second opinion on this, don't unmute yourself. Just use the chat to talk. And for everybody that's trying to figure this out, I'm going to give you all some time to research. So what you should see on the screen here, which was based off of, hold on. You should see this on the screen. So this is how you're going to navigate all the main carriers we're going to talk about. And as we answer each of these questions, I'll do a quick review of each carrier. So we'll get some carrier training as well as some underwriting analysis. The Telesales cheat sheet is here. The face-to-face cheat sheet is here. And you should be able to pull up both of those. Let me share the Telesales one real quick. 1 second. I think this is different. Yeah, okay. So that should be everything that you need to play along. So let's go ahead and start first with the first case. So again, give yourself some time to think through this. Tell me what carrier, based off of your analysis of these cheat sheets, do you think would be the best option for the client? So let's say we have a client who is insulin dependent since age 45, has diabetic neuropathy, is schizophrenic, and has, let's see, had a heart attack 3 years ago. So again, let me re-say that. So started insulin at age 45, schizophrenic, has diabetic neuropathy, and is, let's say, heart attack 3 years ago. Which carrier or carriers do you think will accept this client? So again, please don't unmute yourself if you're watching this live. Just communicate in the chat. It's probably the best way to handle it. So again, what you want to do, and I'll kind of use this example as to how to best utilize the cheat sheet. On the screen, you'll see a cheat sheet. What I want to do is go through each of these conditions. Again, insulin dependent at age 45, schizophrenic, diabetic neuropathy. Yeah, good question, T. Smith. Any age after 50. Let's just say somebody's somewhere between 50 and 85. Typical, if I don't mention the age, it's going to be a typical final expense 50 to 85 client. So all of these conditions, what we want to do on the screen here is pull up whatever cheat sheet that you're using. Let me zoom in here so you can see it better. No matter what cheat sheet you're using, what you want to do is just go through each of the conditions in order to better understand them. So let's just do this together as the example. So they say yes to diabetes insulin usage, right? So now we've got a list of possible carriers here to your right. So on the left is the health conditions. On the right is the best carrier options. So in this case, if the diabetes is yes to insulin usage, we know that based on what we're reading here, I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me move my screen out of the way. We know that, okay, prosperity levels, it's not asked about in the application. So we know we could do prosperity. We know that it looks like Liberty Bankers after 25 is good. And then we know that Royal Neighbors after age 30 is good, or Trinity Family Benefit is good after 40. So let me ask you guys a question. Based on what you see on the screen, again, where I've highlighted here, which of these three carriers are we possibly, which of these four options for carriers, I think there's four, would you not do if all else is equal? So far, just based off of insulin. Actually, I tell you what, the only way that we would figure that out is by running some quotes, because actually it's preferred. I forgot about that about Liberty Bankers. Since they started after 25, they're preferred. So right now, in this case, they're all on the same level here. So there's not one that's better than another based on underwriting. It's based on pricing. So if insulin was the only, does that make sense, everybody? So on a pricing basis or on an underwriting basis, when all else is equal, the only other consideration, well, I don't say the only consideration, the common consideration I would make is to pick the one that's more competitively priced. So maybe this person, again, it's just going to depend on how you run the quotes, see where things land to an extent what the certain face amount is. But at this point, there's no underwriting advantages. Does that make sense? Everybody accepts insulin. Now, what else did we have? We had diabetic neuropathy, right? Diabetic neuropathy is the diabetic complications. So we go down to diabetic complications, and then to the right, we see core carriers. Prosperity equals modified coverage only. What is modified coverage? Well, in the case of Prosperity Life, and as with many carriers, it's not first day full coverage. Well, so now with Prosperity, we cannot actually get them that level of coverage since they have more than just insulin. They have diabetic neuropathy, right? So that takes our options with Prosperity to modified. Do we want to preferentially write modified if there are first day full coverage products available? No. We want to always write first day full coverage when the option is available. So below that, let's check out these other carriers. Trinity Family Benefit, Royal Neighbors, and Great Western does not ask at all about diabetic neuropathy. So what does that tell us here? It tells us that these three are going to be options. They're better. They're the ones right now that will provide level coverage. So now we've removed Prosperity from the mix, right? And now we're left with these three companies. So we're whittling down our options lower and lower as we go through each of these. Now, what's the next thing? Schizophrenia. So we're going to scroll down the list here. Let's check out schizophrenia. We know prosperity is out because it's already going to be modified with diabetic neuropathy, right? Liberty Bankers, it's preferred. The one thing I didn't cover up here is that diabetic neuropathy. Let me just throw that in there. Is that modified? So Liberty Bankers is out as well. So even though it says graded down here for prosperity or preferred, it really doesn't apply because this is on a singular issue basis. So anytime out of the collection of health issues that you've uncovered, you're right. Actually, you're 100% right. Well, wait a minute. I don't think I included that. Did I not? Yeah, actually, I didn't even. What Great Western? Yeah. You're right. Let me put that in there too. Thank you for calling me out on that. So Great Western equals GI. So if they say yes to insulin usage on Great Western, it's not a guaranteed issue. So actually that reduces our carriers down a little bit further. Thank you for calling me out on that, Sean. So what does that mean? That means now we have Trinity and Royal Neighbors, all right? So now we've got 2 carriers to work from. Now, isn't this kind of sounding a little bit easier than trying to navigate 5, 6 plus different carriers at once? I think so. So now we go back to schizophrenia, even though, again, because the core carriers with prosperity and graded is graded with prosperity and Liberty Bankers is preferred, we know that because of prior underwriting we did with the other conditions that we can't get those anyway. So those aren't even being considered. That's how we want to think about this. So we know with schizophrenia that, again, at this line, Royal Neighbors is level, and then Trinity is also level. Okay, so now we've got 2 carriers left in the mix that we can choose from. And then what was the last issue? Heart issues, right? So the heart issue was 3 years ago. Let's just call it a heart attack. I think that's what I said. Let's go back up to the cardiac health history over here. Look to the right. And then if it's greater than 2 years, we know prosperity, Liberty Bankers is out. GTL, we won't consider that. But greater than 2 years that it's been since the issue, we know that Royal Neighbors or Trinity Family Benefit Life work. So now that we've covered all 4 health issues, what does this mean for us? This means that our options are now considered or now focused on 2 different options, right? So how do we figure out at this point which of these carriers to select? What do you guys think as far as what we would do at this point? If all else is equal on underwriting, what's the only factor that we need to concern ourselves with? Right, cost, exactly. So let's take a look on the screen here. You're watching this on my training website. This is our free quoter that we use to run quotes for our clients. So let's say this client is 60 years old. If we're going to run and we know that both Trinity and Royal Neighbors are going to be level or preferred coverage, right? So anytime you do any level, standard, or preferred coverage, you see where it says benefit on the screen here? I'll scroll in a little bit. It says benefit right here. We want to make sure it's selected as level. If we ever run a graded or a modified, we'd click where it says under benefit, graded and modified. And then below that, guaranteed issue. If in fact it was a guaranteed issue, suggested carrier listed in the cheat sheet. Does that all make sense so far? Okay. If it doesn't, let me know. So it was preferred or level. So we're going to click on level. Let's say it was a 10,000 male non-smoker, 60 years old in Tennessee. So let's hit get quotes now. What will output here is a list of all the carriers that I carry, from the lowest monthly cost to the highest monthly cost. And based off of our underwriting examination, again, this is for telesales. So understand there may be other carriers that would work in some circumstances, depending on which kind of cheat sheet you use. So in this case, we're using a telesales cheat sheet. And I'll probably stick to the telesales. Well, I probably stick to the telesales so far. just because most of us only have a smaller collection of carriers. I don't want everybody to think, oh, there's 20 carriers and having to pick up everyone. Most of what you're going to cover is going to be inside of this telesales carrier, whether you do face-to-face or not. So if we look at the list here, you can use graded. Let me get to that in a second, Sean. Good question. So if you look at the list here, family benefit, 4174. Royal Neighbors, 5011. Out of these two options, which one works best for our client? I mean, hopefully it's obvious, right? If we sell on only price alone, which I'm fine with, I think in this market, family benefit's going to be significantly less expensive than Royal Neighbors. In this case, you can get somebody significant savings for the same amount of 10,000 coverage that they want, if that's ultimately what they want. So now we have, again, gone through a sample where we've started with a host of health issues. We worked through it on the cheat sheet, and now we've arrived at two options out of an original 5 or 6. And then we used our quoter to select which option works best. If our lead in or our strategy is to sell on price, right? So again, do you always have to sell on price? This kind of opens up a bigger conversation about what do you sell, pricing versus value. One of the tenets of what I teach agents in this business is to sell on competitiveness as much as possible. Competitiveness doesn't always mean lowest price, but it should mean a competitive price relative to other options. What I fear the most is our clients forgetting our relationship and then having the next agent to walk in and sell them something slightly cheaper. For example, I would be worried about selling the Royal Neighbors at this age, knowing that you could get your client something significantly less expensive. This is a large enough difference in the pricing that I would feel better just suggesting go ahead and simply just write family benefit, because if you don't, if I come back behind you at the difference in price here, so if we divide this by 10, we know every 1,000 in coverage is approximately $4. I could add a $12,000 policy and replace this Royal Neighbors and probably still be about at the same price or $1 or $2 more. Now, if I was a client, I was a good salesperson, I just wouldn't sell this on let's get more bang for your buck. I would also include the conversation about funeral inflation, right? Hey, look at this chart, like what we teach you to do. You see how funeral costs are going to go up tremendously over the next 20 years if we just hold for what basic inflation rates have been. That is a strong reason why that even over a couple of $1,000s difference in funeral pricing or in coverage amount, to replace a higher price policy with a lower price policy, but to maximize the difference in added coverage for the same price. Does this all make sense? Kind of the strategy. That's kind of the strategy I employ and teach agents to do, kind of on a grand scale. I think it's a smart one. Now, what if you had to choose between a Oxford and a family benefit? You'd make that choice up. Clients don't really care, in my experience, about anything really under a 5. It's about the $10 range where I get worried. Where let's say I write a family benefit and then I write maybe a Royal Neighbors or possibly, or it's a Transamerica Standard. Like, that's a huge difference. Why would I want to put myself in that position of getting replaced? That's a significant difference. That's going to ask for a replacement to save money or ask for a replacement to maximize coverage. This making sense so far? So this is kind of the strategy to employ on top of all of the finding your way to get there. Any questions so far from anybody? We're going to do some more of this. So let's pick some other conditions to look at. Hey, David, you're determining the level of graded by the cheat sheet. Yes. Yeah. So again, let's do this a couple of times to repeat. This will be recorded. It is recorded. It will be available for review. But if we go through this process, you'll start to familiarize yourself step by step what you need to do in order to determine underwriting. That's ultimately what we're doing, is utilizing the cheat sheet in order to determine if they're approved or not. Does that make sense? Okay. So go ahead and write down the following conditions. And again, if you know the answer, pipe up, let me know. And in chat. So that way we get everybody an opportunity to think through this, okay? So let's say we have a client who is 48 years old. She has diabetic neuropathy. She is normal height, weight, takes a few blood pressure medications, nothing substantial, and is just looking for a 4,000, well, let's not care about pricing or coverage amount. She's had cancer 5 years ago, been cancer-free, and she had a heart attack 10 months ago. Which carrier or carriers will we look at? So again, let's take a look at the cheat sheet and walk through this again in order to learn the process. Again, I want you to learn the process of determining this right now. She's just pills, no insulin, Sean. No insulin, just pills, and has diabetic neuropathy. So let's again look through the process of how to determine which company out of the options that are available works best. So let's share screen. And again, this is kind of reminding me of another principle. What I want you guys to learn is not necessarily every nuance of the underwriting at this point, especially if you're getting started. What's more important is learning the process to determine which of the companies is best, right? So taking the complex, and making it few, or simplifying, taking the complex and making it simple. The way we do that is through a repeatable, duplicatable process. And what you'll find is as you learn this process, the underwriting, it'll start to stick eventually. So then you'll be able, like me, to remember, okay, which carriers don't take diabetic neuropathy. I could rattle that off instantly, but you may not be able to because I've done it a bunch. But by doing this process, you're going to start picking up and understanding and remembering where those underwriting differences are. So if we go back to the screen again, 49 years old. So is age a factor here that we should consider? The answer is yes, right? Let's see here. I should have it on here. There it is. Okay. So if we look at prospects younger than 50 on the cheat sheet, you'll see that Liberty Bankers Life starts at 18 years old for preferred, 25-year-old for standard rates. And then Great Western and GTL will take, Great Western will take 40 to 80, GTL 40 to 90, okay? So now we've got a listing of a couple of carriers on age-wise that are flexible. Now, again, what's the assumption here? The assumption here is most of these carriers don't start until after 50. That is the truth for Royal Neighbors, Trinity, Prosperity. So we don't even have to consider those. So really the only three we have to look at are going to be Great Western, Liberty Bankers Life, and GTL. Again, remember, don't worry about all these little details. Worry about learning the process to taking them complex and simplifying. So now at this point, what are we looking at here? Prosperity, Parkinson's, lupus, graded. Okay, no, not that one, this one. Okay, so we've got Great Western, Liberty Bankers Life, and then GTL. So we had a diabetic. So let's go to diabetic. No insulin used. Okay, all carriers are fine with pill-based treatment for diabetes. So there's no knockouts for just plain old diabetes. But we do have diabetic neuropathy, right? So let's check out diabetic neuropathy. Well, again, Liberty Bankers Life is for diabetic neuropathy, is modified. Okay, so right there in the list, you can see it there. We probably shouldn't consider as a first choice Liberty Bankers Life because that's not preferred, right? Our goal is to get preferred or standard or level coverage in all cases, if possible. So since that's not an option, let's just kind of put that to the side. We may go back to it. Usually we won't because the modified plan with Liberty is inferior to other modified or guaranteed issue options. But in most cases, you just kind of move that to the side and possibly revisit based on the total underwriting picture once we've determined that. So at this point, Great Western doesn't ask. Okay, so we might be able to get level coverage, right? Yeah, so Great Western, I don't know what BPP is, but yeah, so there's no questions on the application for Great Western for diabetic neuropathy. No blood, yeah, blood pressure is a, yeah, see there's the Best Plan Pro, yeah, this is why it's really important to learn the process with the cheat sheet. It's the difference between typing up your work on a calculator and not being able to explain it, right? We want to be like when we want to be the teacher's pet. We want to be able to explain our work, write it down. In this case, review the cheat sheet and walk through it step by step to understand what the underwriting is. So at this point, we have Great Western, right? And what's the other carrier? GTL, right? So let's keep going up here. What did else we say? 5 years since cancer, right? So let's roll up the cancer. Okay, GTL graded if less than 2 years, or Great Western if less than, wait a minute. Let's see, let's take this. Do this here. Great Western level if greater than 2 years, okay? So in this case, Great Western will work because the cancer is 5 years out. GTL is only going to be graded. Remember how graded works, the GTL? 5% return of premium first year, 50% of the coverage amount second year, and then full coverage third year and beyond. So we would prefer to have a level plan, right? So at this point, it appears as if Great Western level is the best option. Now, what was the last point? The last point was heart attack 10 months or 11 months ago, right? Within the last year. So let's scroll up to cardiac history. Let's check this out. Less than 2 years is graded. Great Western is GI. So what is this telling us as being the best option at this point? Would we want a GTL plan that's graded that gives half the face amount in the first year? Or would we want a Great Western plan that is a 2-year waiting period plan? What's best for the client? All else equal. GTL, right. Now, wait a minute. What if there's a pricing difference? What if GTL, and it's not, but let's say it is. What if GTL is what if Great Western is $50 a month? GTL is $60 a month. Is GTL still the best deal? I would suggest the answer is yes. Why? What's more important to the client? The amount of coverage they have or the price? Yeah, I would say that's probably the case in most cases. You could argue, well, I don't know what the most important thing is. It depends on what the client asks, right? Or wants. That's probably the best answer. Now, I will take a stand because I'm an advisor to my client. That's how I look at myself. I will make a recommendation based on what I perceive as an expert as the best choice. And I do not believe the first choice is for price. I think the first choice is always for quality of coverage. So my sales pitch, whenever I present an option like this to them, I say, look, I could get you a slightly lesser premium and we can look at it if you want to, but you cannot get the level of coverage that you can through this company GTL as you would with that cheaper option. If you died in the second year with the Great Western, you're only getting your money back. Where GTL, you're going to get half of that face amount. You're going to get a lot more coverage. And if you were my mother, Mrs. Jones, I would much rather you pick the GTL plan, slightly more expensive, but more comprehensive in coverage. What's your thoughts on that? You can always turn it around and get their feelings. Maybe they're like, I'm not going to die in 2 years. Give me the cheap one. Cool. Either way, you make them a client, right? That's the ultimate goal. However, what I don't want you guys doing as a rule is selling exclusively on price, despite what the underwriting says. So in this case, if you go in and you push Great Western because it's $10 cheaper and it's price, if I come behind you and I show them a different way to look at the coverage, I show them some different considerations. Do you think that, what's the chances of me getting somebody on my side of the deal when I could show a value proposition that isn't too far off from the same price? I would argue, in other words, how many of you people out there replace a Colonial Penn when it's in the 2-year period of waiting? With the first day full coverage? How often do you do that? Probably 8, 9 times out of 10. So if you set yourself up to sell on price alone without a consideration for value, you're asking to be replaced, okay? So always remember that. Your bias should be towards getting the best quality of coverage first and foremost, and then good pricing. Now, there's some options or opportunities where, and this doesn't happen too often, but it might happen if you write like a prosperity modified versus like, well, that's a little different. It's very rare you're going to find 2 carriers with similar kinds of coverage, or it's very rare you're going to find one that's a lot cheaper but modified compared to your level first day full coverage product. There are some opportunities when that'll happen, like Mutual of Omaha guaranteed issue that comes through the mail, rings a bell. But this is really important. The takeaway lesson from this example is sell on value, because you will flip people over. Why? Because they believe in their life insurance. But when you uncover the weakness in it and show them another way, they're more oriented now than perhaps they were initially, in many cases due to value. So the value proposition as a lead in, not pricing, is the best way to sell this stuff. Hey, Donald. Donald asks, neuropathy means that they have symptoms like tingling and foot pain, but don't have diabetes yet. No, diabetic neuropathy is the best way to describe diabetic neuropathy. It's prolonged diabetic. It typically happens when somebody has diabetes for a really long time that's uncontrolled, and it's basically damaged the nerve endings in the appendages. Typically in the feet are the most common, sometimes in the hands and the fingers, and it causes this constant numbness issue. So a common medication to take for that would be gabapentin, also Neurontin, that's the brand name of that. Gabapentin is the generic. And then Lyrica, not as commonly used, but can be used. This is a huge help to diabetic neuropathy. But typically with those who have diabetic neuropathy, they already have diabetes. Sometimes they find out that they've got diabetes and diabetic neuropathy all at the same time because they never go to the doctor to do regular checkups, and then they're put on all the stuff at the same time. Yeah, just Google it. If you Google diabetic neuropathy and meds, always will show you the usage. Just Google it. It's the best thing to do. Everything that's confusing to you've ever heard of, I always ask the client just to get their engagement, and then I'll throw it into Google and see what it says. So always do that. Okay. Any questions about this process? Do y'all see kind of this process coming into fruition as far as what steps you need to take to figure out which companies are best depending on the circumstances? Sean says, when do you worry about decline modified because of numerous complications, meaning cardiac history is graded for Great Western, as is neuropathy? It's not for neuropathy, Sean. Cardiac history is graded if it's less than 2 years. If it's more than 2 years, it's not. So, oh, okay. Yep. I'm going to have to make that, I'm going to have to update that with Great Western. Okay. For the record, just so you guys know, Great Western for me, I almost always use it strictly as guaranteed issue. And the reason why is because my opinion is that Great Western's level coverage up to this point, if it changed May 1st, I'll definitely check it out. But up to this point, the Great Western level coverage has always been confusing. I feel like writing a Great Western application, there's a difference in how it's stated on the application versus what is stated in the agent guide. If you took a look at this prior, again, I don't know what it is right now. It's May 6th, it's May 1st. I don't know what the Great Western underwriting changes. But based on what I would used to see, I just didn't feel comfortable because many times if you can get somebody covered level with Great Western, you can get it covered elsewhere, first day full coverage, with another company. So I've always, and that's why I typed in Great Western a few times here, like greater than 2 years for certain health issues. The reason I did that is because I don't like you guys writing level, because what I'm scared of is, because there's a discrepancy in the agent guide versus what the application says, I don't want you to write a plan that might have been contested if the client dies within 2 years. Whereas it's not clear, maybe which are they going to go by based on how it's verbally written on the app or the agent guide. I'd rather you go with a company that's going to be a little bit more exact with their terminology on the application. Okay, good. Maybe they did, so I hope so. Either way, I still think Great Western's probably a better product. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. For guaranteed issue. That's always been my, basically, Sean. Guaranteed issue is pretty much the only play I make with Great Western. I'll be happy to change my opinion as soon as something changes, or as soon as I check it out. Hey, Sean, will you do me a favor? Will you email me the Great Western information? Let me take a look at it, and then I'll be happy to update it. Anybody got any other questions so far? Is this a valuable process that you're learning? Do you feel like you're getting something out of this? Clarifying some confusion? Getting the underwriting part is really important. Hopefully we all understand why. We don't want to call our companies up, get a decline or a modified or rated up offer, and then now we've got to try to, wait a minute, Mr. Prospect, here, let me do this again. I have lost deals because I didn't carefully review the underwriting. Okay, so great. Let's take another condition here. Let's say we have a client who is 60 years old, male, smokes, yes, just smokes cigarettes, has COPD, takes insulin, and it started insulin after 50, no diabetic neuropathy, and takes oxygen. Who would we look at in this case? So let's work through this while my team exercises their brain. Let's see here. Okay. So I rattle off a bunch of stuff. So over 50. So we know we don't have to necessarily look at a younger age range carrier. Smokes, that doesn't make any difference. I will say if they do smoke anything other than a cigarette, you'll notice that Prosperity Life offers non-tobacco rates for these people. So if they smoke cigars, pipe smoking, chewing, and they smoke weed, they can literally, be lighting a blunt up or hitting their bong in front of you. That is non-tobacco rates for Prosperity. For everybody else, it's probably a decline when it comes to smoking weed. Sometimes you can get smoker rates for them. There's been some loosening of the requirements there, so just keep that in mind. But back to our sample prospect. So smokes cigarettes, has COPD. So again, we're looking on the cheat sheet. We're scrolling up. Where's COPD? Boom, right there. We see, okay, Prosperity is graded. Liberty Bankers Life is standard. Non-core carriers, Royal Neighbors, and graded, right? No, I haven't had anybody light one up in front of me, David. I'm sure I've had agents that have had it happen. I've had a drug deal done in front of me. That was a little scary. Beyond that, nothing else really. Okay, losing focus. All right. So what is this? What do we see? What's our takeaway from this? If we look on the screen here, Prosperity is graded, Royal Neighbors is graded, Trinity Family Benefits graded, and Liberty Bankers Life is standard. Which one of these are we going at this point to focus on as possibly being an option? Liberty Bankers Life, right. Why? Because standard with Liberty Bankers Life is first day full coverage. I'm not saying that this is the best option yet because we're not done with our underwriting. we've got to do a few more steps. So I think I said the person was diabetic, right? No insulin used. Okay, well, that's everybody. So still maybe Liberty Bankers Life Standard. What was the other thing, the last thing I mentioned here? Takes oxygen, right? So if we scroll on down, oxygen use. Great Western guaranteed issue. So here again, another example. If you only see Great Western guaranteed issue as listed next to the condition, what does that mean? That means that is the only option. Again, this is telesales. Any guaranteed issue would work if you're not doing telesales, if you can sell it face to face. But in our case, Great Western is our guaranteed issue telesales carrier. So that is our only option. That means every other carrier, it's not going to be a good option. Technically, you could write a modified plan with Liberty Bankers Life, but why wouldn't you? Or why would you do that? Or why wouldn't? Yeah, why wouldn't you do a modified? Well, because modified is like a 3-year wait. The prices are way higher. And instead of explaining that in each of these cases, I just don't even offer that at this point. So what this means is at the end of the day, just because of this one thing that this client has, oxygen use, this is a Great Western guaranteed issue. I don't care if the person's running laps is in good shape, never been to a hospital except the last time, and started taking oxygen. If that person falls into oxygen use, it is always guaranteed issue. This is the case with any guaranteed issue, whether we're doing COPD or face-to-face or telesales. Anytime on the left here, you see any mention of guaranteed issue, this is always going to be guaranteed issue. The only exception is if you're looking at telesales versus face-to-face. Face-to-face might have some differences, like this mini stroke TIA. We could possibly get a number of carriers. I believe Americo Eagle, Forrester's Standard, if it's between 1 and 2 years ago. So there's some differences depending on if you're face-to-face or over the phone. In this example, understand if this is what you see on the left, no matter what their health is, if they've got one of these conditions, it's always guaranteed issue. Donald asks, COPD is not Liberty Bankers Life Simplified Standard. No. Well, it is if there's no oxygen, right? So at this point, but prior to the oxygen, we knew that the client would be qualified if that was all it was. But once we started looking at the oxygen, right, as we progressed our underwriting process to the other conditions the client listed, at this point, we review our cheat sheet, and then under column 34, row 34, we find that oxygen use is a guaranteed issue. So it doesn't matter if they would have been qualified because of COPD, because they take oxygen, and we know that that's unacceptable with the Liberty Bankers Life Standard. Does that make sense? If they take oxygen with Liberty Bankers Life, it's not going to be standard, in other words. Sean says they are now disqualifying oxygen has been started in less than the 24 months. Okay. Okay, started in the last 24 months. Only have notes of the PDF sent. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So in this case, we would be looking at possibly American General. Any guaranteed issue carrier that you can get over the phone would work. I don't like in a telesales world to do guaranteed issue with AIG because they only do an electronic application, not a phone authorization application. So that means the client has to either digitally sign it, which good luck getting your client to do that. Most of these people can't even open their smartphones to access their Facebook, much less DocuSign or walk through a multi-step procedure signing an app. I mean, some people can, but about 1 out of 4 can't, and you're going to lose that just by default. Or you can mail the app, but good luck getting that stuff returned on this style of clients that you're selling. I would prefer a verbal authorization app. So in this case, if what Sean is saying here is the case, which I have no reason to believe it isn't, if it's based on his words, if it's been longer than 24 months and they're on oxygen, then you can get them approved. Otherwise, you might have to just take the chance with an AIG and do an e-app or possibly a written emailed app. So good points, though. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's do one more here. And if anybody's got any questions, just feel free to type or sound it out. I have a client who is 65, female, non-smoker, who is on COPD or has COPD, does not take oxygen, and is had a heart attack 3 years ago, and uses Direct Express. Which carrier is best? So here's where the trick is. So sometimes you'll have carriers that will accept a case. Right now, based on what I'm sure you guys are thinking this, oh, that sounds like a Liberty Bankers Life simplified standard price, right? We just went through this, right? But why can't Liberty Bankers Life take this? Does anybody know? Liberty Bankers Life can't take this because they don't accept Direct Express. So if your client can qualify for product, but their form of payment doesn't work with that particular company, guess what? Not going to happen. You have to opt for some other product, even though there's a better product out there. Now you might be saying, Dave, why can't you just get this person to open a bank account? Usually there's a reason they're on a Direct Express card. It's because they can't open a bank account. They owe a bank money. They've been blacklisted, all right? Or red listed, whatever. They're just not allowed to get a bank because it dipped in the red. They never paid it back. And now they have a Direct Express card because they're required to get their Social Security check because they couldn't open an account. So it's unlikely you're going to. Plus, what you're going to find is you're going to go down this rabbit hole of trying to do all this stuff for your clients, which takes away from seeing other people. So this is a decision you got to make for yourself. I don't recommend that. You can do it if you want to. I think it's highly inefficient and improbable the vast majority of the time that you're going to get what you want, which is, level coverage. I would just rather write this up with a less, in this case, I wouldn't say it's inferior because the options aren't there for the better ones. I take it on face value. If you don't have the proper coverage, even though I could get you better coverage, and you don't have a bank account and only a Direct Express, we'll have to opt for something else. So let's walk through that and kind of see how it works. So let's take a look at, if we scroll down, you'll notice in the cheat sheet, we also have there it is, Direct Express accepted. We look at our core carriers, and now we know which ones to just look at. Prosperity Life, Trinity Family Benefit, and then Great Western. Again, also AIG too. Well, so now we know what to not look at. Royal Neighbors, Liberty Bankers Life. So Liberty Bankers Life isn't an option now, right? Even though it's COPD standard pricing, it's not an option because we can't set a payment. So if we scroll up and we look at COPD, Prosperity is graded. Family Benefit is graded. So now we've got two different carriers. I think the rest of them health-wise are the same. So which of these options do we want to use? Prosperity Life or Family Benefit? Yes, sort of, kind of. Let's take a look at that. I'm curious to see what the difference is here. Hold on. So the question here, what's the difference between, besides price, remember it's price and value, right? What's the difference between Prosperity and Family Benefit? When it comes to graded coverage, I'm sorry. What's the difference in the graded coverage for Prosperity and Family Benefit? Anybody know? Yeah, we know Family Benefit's very expensive. But look, $91.24 for $10,000 on Family Benefit. Prosperity is $95.63. We'll check that out. Family Benefit might be Fam Bam. I like that. I like that name. That's the best. Or is it Fam Bim? Fam Bim? Whatever. Family Benefit is expensive, but prosperity is more expensive. So why would I want to write prosperity possibly instead of family benefit for graded, even though it's more expensive? Anybody know? There you go, Kyle. Now we're talking, baby. Full comp on the prosperity. That's a good reason to consider. I don't think about the money. It's like somebody here does, Kyle. However, that's a really good reason. So I'm going to notch that one up. I'm going to explain that in a minute. That's something worth considering. Do you guys know that there is a difference in the graded plans between family benefit and then prosperity life? There's the graded. So here's the thing, man, there's so many good lessons here. Family benefit, graded is a marketing term. It's not a technical term like whole life insurance. A graded plan can actually be a 2-year waiting period product. A graded plan can also be like GTL, where there's a little bit of coverage in the first year, then even more in the second year, and then full coverage in the third year and beyond. Do y'all know that? It's the same thing like modified, guaranteed issue can be the same thing. Well, in the case of the coverage type, now it's technically guaranteed issues, no questions asked. Modified is there are health questions asked, but on the actual coverage amount, it's usually the same. But then sometimes it can be 2-year, 3-year wait. Certain products, the prime term 100 product with prosperity is a 3-year kind of stair-step graded plan without full coverage until the start of the 4th year. So going back here to prosperity versus family benefit. Family benefit has, let me see if I can pull it up here, has this wacky guaranteed issue thing. Not guaranteed issue, graded benefit. So if you see here, they measure the graded benefit to these factors here. So the death benefit, let me just read it for you. The death benefit for any graded plan is limited for the first 2 years. Again, rule of thumb, ladies and gentlemen, always carry the agent guides with you. Please carry the agent guides with you. So much of the questions here can be answered by referring to those. It's limited to the 2 first years. Then the first year benefit is a factor of the age shown below. The second year benefit is 50% of the original face amount. To calculate your first year benefit, simply multiply the face amount by the factor in the age and sex of question. So if we have a 65-year-old male and non-tobacco, and you see here it says 1.136, 10,000 times 0.136 means in the first year, this client gets $1,360 in coverage. Does that make sense? Yeah, because that's 0.136 of 10,000. In the second year, they get 5,000 in coverage, right? Then third year and beyond, it's full 100% coverage of $10,000. Make sense? So how does that compare to prosperity? Let's see if it shows up here. Probably will. Prosperities is what we call a true graded plan. So let's pull up how the graded works here. I'll tell it to you if I can't find it here quickly. Okay, I'm not going to be able to find it. So the way graded works with prosperity is that the first full year, you have 30% of the face amount as the death benefit from the first day. In the start of the second year, you have 70% of the face amount. And then in the third year, you have the full face amount. In other words, if it's a $10,000 plan, that first day, the client gets $3,000 in coverage, right? 30%. The second year, they get $7,000 in coverage. The third year and beyond, they get $10,000. Now, so then based on the comparison, which is better? Family benefit at the lower price or prosperity a couple of bucks higher? What's a better value for the client? Prosperity. Bingo. Why? Because they get more than double the coverage in the first year. And then in the second year, they get 2,000 more coverage. Now think, if you had walked in and sold family benefit graded because it's cheaper, I sell on price all the time. That's all that matters. And then I walk in behind you and I show them the math. I show them what they're getting. Do I have a chance of beating you and replacing you? I think I've got a pretty good chance. I think I can talk someone into taking this because it's a better deal. It's a better deal. It's not me talking them into it. It's just an obvious value proposition difference. Don't be that guy that sells on price alone without consideration of value. That's the ultimate goal here. Okay. All right. All right. Anybody got any final questions? I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover here. Is there a cheat sheet for these kind of things? I don't know what you mean. I mean, we're looking at the cheat sheet. You're determining this stuff. And the ultimate outcome of this is, and yeah, I think maybe understand better what you're saying. Like as far as how graded works, how the different plans work. Yeah, wait times. There's no, so you can go on to this page, best final expense carriers page. You can access it off of the menu here under the best final expense carriers. You can review your carriers, and you should be. And if you ever wonder, typically I summarize the options here as to how they work. If you click here and then go to the actual individual carrier page. However, you should, just like Thomas says, I'll read exactly what it says, always have the agent guides on you. Even if it's a PDF on your Google Drive or phone or tablet, always carry the agent guides. This is critical because if you don't see it answered on any of my content, I have a lot, but I don't have all of it. If you never see it there, always grab that agent guide. That agent guide is going to tell you very early on how that product works. Again, if you look at family benefits, we find out on page 4 how graded works. So keep that in mind. That will help immensely if you don't see anything else from me as far as what works, how it works. Any final questions, thoughts, concerns? Unmute yourself or type them. Can you explain grandkid riders? If the insured passes away before the kids, does that coverage go away? Refer to the agent guide. I don't really do a lot of business with grandkid riders. It's just nothing I've really pushed. It's not a bad idea. But check that out. Call the companies up. Most likely the riders go away when the policy is over with. Unless there's some, and I've never seen this, but if there's some kind of verbiage that says you can convert the rider into a private policy upon death, that might be an option too. Typically, I don't think it's in there. All right. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I hope this was a valuable training. I think there's a lot of good takeaways from this as far as learning the process of underwriting. I will be saving this, putting it on YouTube. I'll make sure to share the recording in the group me. If I can do anything for you, just reach out to me, and hope this was helpful. Y'all take care. See ya.